The top stories tonight in Y News. The Armed Forces of the Philippines Deputy Chief of Staff for Intelligence was relieved from his post following the publication of a list of people tagged as NBA members and killed by the military.
The Philippine Food and Drug Administration has approved AstraZeneca's coronavirus vaccine for emergency use.
The Department of Labor and Employment is tracking down the recruiters of Filipino workers who have been victims of human trafficking in Syria.
And Chinese cities are now using anal swabs to screen for COVID infections.
Good evening, Philippines and the world. Today is Thursday, January 28, 2021. Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the country and in other parts of the world. I am Harleen Delgado.
We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts and our website, untvweb.com. I am Angelo Castro III.
First in the news. Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana has ordered the relief of Armed Forces of the Philippines or AFP Deputy Chief of Staff for Intelligence Major General Alex Luna. The order comes after the publication of an error-riddled list of alleged communist militant rebels slain by the military. Leia Ilagan reports.
Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana called the publication of an erroneous list of NPA rebels killed in military operations as an unforgivable lapse. Netizens were quick to point out inaccuracies in the list, with one suggesting that the AFP do some fact-checking first. With this, Secretary Lorenzana has ordered the immediate relief of AFP Deputy Chief of Staff for Intelligence Major General Alex Luna. The DND chief said Luna's relief was needed to make sure the organization took their job seriously. Lorenzana added that even if investigations are still ongoing, his decisions are based on command responsibility. Luna will be placed under the office of the AFP Chief of Staff. The military earlier apologized to those who were inadvertently named in the list of students who joined the NPA and allegedly died or were captured. The list was posted in the AFP Information Exchange Facebook account and has since been immediately taken down or deleted from its social media accounts. The AFP is already conducting an internal investigation and will review their process to avoid the same mistakes in the future. Leia Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Baguio Mayor Benjamin Magalong still has President Rodrigo Duterte's trust despite admitting lapses in the implementation of health protocols during a recent party in the city of Pines. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said an investigation has been launched on the widely criticized social gathering. The palace insists there is no double standard in the government's implementation of health protocols.
So hayaan na po natin na umusad ang proseso. Buo po ang tiwala ni Presidente kay Mayor Magalong. Buo po ang kanyang respeto kay Mayor Magalong. And when he says that the law will be implemented, we trust that Mayor Magalong will implement the law.
The Philippine government has vowed to bring home a group of Filipino migrant workers who were tricked to work in the United Arab Emirates only to be forcefully trafficked to Syria. Officials are also tracking their recruitment agencies. Ray Pelayo reports.
The Department of Labor and Employment is now launching an investigation on the Filipinos who were trafficked in Syria. The DOLE's announcement follows a report published earlier this week in the Washington Post about at least 35 Filipinos who were recruited to work in the UAE but instead were sold to Syrian servitude and subject to abuse. Some of those interviewed by the Daily said they had arrived in the UAE on 30-day tourist visas. They claimed the recruitment agencies that brought them to the Gulf locked them up until their visas expired, and then they were sold for between $8,000 and $10,000 and taken to Syria. Those who managed to escape sought refuge at the Philippine mission in Damascus. Some of them reported abuse at the hands of embassy staff.
Marami sa ating mga kababayan na sumusugal. May mga backdoor, may iba galing Mindanao, dadaan yan sa Palawan, pupunta ng Malaysia, sa Sarawak, then from Malaysia, they go to Dubai.
Secretary Bello said they will track the recruiters of these Filipinos.
Pag nalaman namin kung ano yung agency na yon, ay either we will cancel their franchise or even sue them for illegal recruitment.
Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. is sending a team from Manila to replace some embassy staff in Syria. The same number of old embassy personnel are expected to return. But the DFA said not all 5 are under investigation. Locsin assured that the DFA would send home all distressed Filipinos awaiting repatriation in Syria. Ray Pelayo, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque says the diplomatic protest filed against China's new law allowing its Coast Guard to fire on foreign ships will not affect our vaccine procurement from China. Rosalie Cos explains why.
Malacanang welcomed the Department of Foreign Affairs filing of a diplomatic protest over China's new law allowing its Coast Guard to fire at foreign vessels in Chinese-claimed reefs. In a press briefing, Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said the move of the DFA was consistent with the position of the Duterte administration.
We welcome the diplomatic protest, of course, of the DFA, and this will prove that the Philippines is fully committed to the rule of law and will assert all its rights available under existing principles of international law to defend its interests.
Meanwhile, the palace official believes this will not affect the ongoing negotiations with Chinese manufacturers for the COVID-19 vaccines. The Philippines has procured 25 million doses of China's Sinovac vaccine. The first batch of vaccines is expected to arrive in the Philippines next month.
Wala pong epekto yan dahil ibang usapin naman ng bakuna. Ang bakuna po is actually a humanitarian act of the entire planet Earth in response to a humanitarian disaster.
Secretary Roque says as the government's foreign policy remains, President Duterte will defend our national interest. Rosalie Cos, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The United States has reaffirmed its pledge to defend the Philippines against any attack. Its spokesperson Ned Price, as published in the U.S. Embassy in the Philippines website. Secretary of State Antony J. Blinken on January 27 spoke with Philippine Secretary of Foreign Affairs Teodoro Locsin Jr., in which the two officials reaffirmed that a strong U.S.-Philippine alliance is vital to a free and open Indo-Pacific region. Price emphasized America's rejection of China's maritime claims in the South China Sea, reiterating the importance of the mutual defense. Price also emphasized America's pledge to stand with Southeast Asian claimants in the face of the People's Republic of China pressure.
Relatives of Christine Dacera found irregularities in the report on the flight attendant's death released by the Philippine National Police. Dante Amento tells us why.
The family of Christine Dacera continues to believe that a crime was committed in connection with her death. A report released by PNP Wednesday said Dacera died of natural causes, ruling out that her death on December 31 was a crime. Dacera's family spokesperson, attorney Brick Reyes, said The family does not agree with the findings of Medical Legal Officer, Police Lieutenant Colonel Jose Palmero. The Sera was buried on January 10 prior to the autopsy made by Dr. Palmero on the victim's 18 visceral body organ samples.
Hindi naman ito autopsy kasi hindi niya na-examine yung bangkay. Yung na-examine niya, parts of organs. Paano mo ma-determine yung cause of death sa parts of the organs?
Reyes adds the Sera's family has no information who gave the organ samples. Based on the first PNP's autopsy report made by Dr. Michael Sarmiento, he had not mentioned there were organ samples taken from the victim's body. Meanwhile, the Sera's camp also wants to identify the other occupants, particularly at room 2207, and include them as respondents on the case.
So far, we have only identified one, Jake Esteron, who came from 2207. So, marami pa mga respondents na dapat isama rito at saka ma-identify. If the NBI was able to interview these people, then I think they should be now included as respondents.
They are still waiting for the results of the National Bureau of Investigation or NBI parallel investigation that would allegedly help resolve Christine Dacera's true cause of death.
We hope and pray that the NBI results will be more credible. Kasi we saw what they did in General Santos. More than 20 or 30 of them were examining the body for 5 hours. Despite the report of Dr. Sarmiento nga empty ang bladder, the NBI forensics team was able to recover urine.
Justice Secretary Minardo Guevara disclosed that NBI has already finished with their forensic examination, including the toxicology report from their re-autopsy on Dacera's remains. Damtiamento, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
For those watching us on YouTube, please click the subscribe button you see on the right side of your screen and ring the bell for notification. You may also follow us on Facebook.
The Cordillera and Davao regions may face tougher quarantine classifications in the month of February. In an online briefing, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said that the COVID-19 bed utilization rates of the two regions are nearing moderate risk, which is among the considerations for quarantine level. The interagency task force will meet tonight to discuss the appeals of local government units on quarantine restrictions and other matters relating to the country's COVID-19 response. He added, the quarantine classifications to be implemented for next month may be announced this week.
So baka magkaroon po ng pag-anunsyo before the 1st of February. Sigurado po yan before the 1st of February.
The Department of Transportation confirmed that 2 top officials of the Metro Rail Transit Line 3 have tested positive for COVID-19. Joan Nano tells us why.
43 MRT3 personnel were tested positive of COVID-19. All of them are working in the depot. Based on MRT's data, 36 of them are office employees and 6 maintenance staff contracted the virus. 2 of them were MRT General Manager Rodolfo Garcia, that is currently under the Intensive Care Unit or ICU, and Director for Operations Engineer Michael Capati, who is now recuperating. This was confirmed by Transportation Secretary Arthur Tugade, hoping for the immediate recovery of both officials and several other MRT3 employees. The MRT management has placed the depot under enhanced access control, limiting the entry of personnel, as well as shifting all of their office workers into work-from-home scheme. The depot is where the trains are being prepared and undergo regular maintenance. The DOTR assures that train trips will continue as there were no operations personnel were infected of COVID-19.
To our MRT3 passengers, regular operations po tayo sa MRT3. Wala po tayong reported case ng COVID-19 among our station's personnel. Ipinapatupad pa rin po natin yung mga health and safety protocols natin sa MRT3.
The agency is also planning to top some personnel from the Philippine National Railways and LRT2 to help the operations of MRT.
Meron po kaming programa na kung saan meron kaming rotation at pull. Pag kami humugot ng mga tao sa operation, meron na sa pool na ilalagay doon. Yung kasagutan, baka maubos ang tao. Sana ho naman wag. So, ang mangyayari, maghihiraman yung other rail network para tulungan ng MRT3 kung saan may breakout. So, pag kunyari may breakout yung isa, make sure yung iba hindi mag-breakout para nasa position siya tumulong doon sa ibang railway.
The MRT management once again reminded the passengers to strictly follow the health and safety protocols in public transportation. Joan Nano, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Philippine Food and Drug Administration announced it has approved the emergency use of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine. Meanwhile, the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao is seeking halal certification on approved vaccines. Aiko Miguel will give us the details in this live report. Aiko, go ahead.
Yes, Diego, good evening. COVID-19 vaccine AstraZeneca is the second COVID-19 vaccine to have secured an emergency use authorization in the Philippines after Pfizer-BioNTech's COVID-19 vaccine last January 14. According to FDA Director General Eric Domingo, they have granted COVID-19 vaccine AstraZeneca after meeting all conditions for an EUA and its benefits outweighs the potential risk. Here is Food and Drug Administration Director General Undersecretary Eric Domingo.
After a thorough review of the currently available data by our medical and regulatory experts, the FDA is granting an emergency use authorization to the COVID-19 vaccine AstraZeneca.
Based on the interim data from the ongoing phase 3 trials, the vaccine has an efficacy rate of 70% after the first dose. The efficacy rate after the second dose is still being determined. Based on the presented indications of the vaccine, it can be administered to 18-year-olds and above. It can also be given to those with comorbidity but in a stable condition. Health professionals has to assess first their condition before being inoculated with it. But AstraZeneca's vaccine can be administered to pregnant women as recommended by the World Health Organization. According to DG Domingo, there are no reported serious adverse effects on people who have been inoculated with it in other countries, except from regular side effects experienced after being inoculated like pain and tenderness in the injection site, fatigue, headaches, feverishness, and myalgia or muscle pain. Second dose of COVID-19 vaccine AstraZeneca can be given 4 to 12 weeks after receiving its first dose.
It is very good in preventing severe COVID-19. Halos 100% din. Kaya lang syempre medyo maliit pa yung datos nila at ma-update pa yan as we get more data on the people who are included in the clinical trial.
Meanwhile, Diego, the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao is seeking to have halal certification on COVID-19 vaccines. According to FDA, some vaccine manufacturers have considered seeking halal certification, but experts are still evaluating whether they should be given with it in the country.
Yung Pfizer, ang sabi nila, they're still working on halal certification. Ito pong AstraZeneca, meron po silang certification na na walang animal products or animal source na ginamit sa kanilang bakuna, but I believe they are still also working on a halal certification. Ang halal certified actually is yung Sinovac dahil ito po yung ginagamit sa Indonesia and they got a halal certification from Indonesia.
Diego, currently experts are evaluating the application of Gamaleya, Sinovac, and BioNTech or biotech. The FDA is also waiting for the EUA application of Moderna, Janssen of Johnson & Johnson, and Sinopharm. The government is expecting 17 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine AstraZeneca to be delivered in the country in the coming months. And that is the latest live. Back to you, Diego.
Thank you, Aiko Miguel, reporting live.
The Department of Health reported 1,169 new COVID-19 cases nationwide today. The new infections brought the country's cumulative 575, of which 33,427 are active cases. Most of the new cases were reported in Quezon City with 57, Isabela with 54, Manila with 42, Davao City with 42, and Rizal with 42. It also reported 60 new recoveries and 71 more deaths, raising the total to 475,596 and 10,552 respectively.
The national government is prepared to supply coronavirus vaccines for over 2 million residents of Quezon City given the limited resources of its local government unit. Asher Cadapan Jr. reports why.
The Quezon City government targets to vaccinate at least 70% of its 3 million population, or equivalent to about 2.1 million residents. The LGU will prioritize more than 1 million residents, which include Quezon City government healthcare workers, barangay health emergency response teams or BERTs, private health workers, senior citizens, indigent persons, uniformed personnel, and persons with disabilities aged 16 years old and above. Mayor Joy Belmonte said they are also considering to provide vaccination to private employees working but not residing in Quezon City.
Karamihan naman din sa mga private sector employees, marami sa kanila, they may not be residing in Quezon City but they spend most of their living hours in Quezon City. So it might actually be fair for them to be vaccinated in Quezon City. So this is being considered very seriously.
The city government has allotted 1 billion pesos for the procurement of COVID-19 vaccines through the tripartite agreement with the government and the supplier AstraZeneca. But it can only fund for the vaccination of about 500,000 residents. However, Cabinet Secretary Carlo Nograles assures that the national government will help in the supply of vaccines.
Kung ano po ang kulang, ano po ang kinakailangan na additional vaccines to inoculate the 70% target for Quezon City, ang national government na po ang bahala dyan. You have our assurance that we will commit to inoculate the 2.1 million to 2.4 million residents of Quezon City that we need to inoculate.
The pre-registration and rollout of the Quezon City's vaccination program will require the use of the Q-Citizen Identification or QCID that is also being used in other services in the LGU. In obtaining the QCID online, registrants will be asked if they are willing to be vaccinated for COVID-19. Based on the QCID survey, out of about 46,500 respondents, more than half of them, or about 26,000 residents, are willing to take the COVID-19 vaccine. About 15,700 are undecided, while more than 4,500 said no. To encourage people to take the vaccine, Health Secretary Francisco Duque III asks the LGUs to inform the residents that the vaccines are safe to be used, but with possible minor adverse effects.
Always tell our people that these vaccines are safe, no? Of course, there is no such a thing as a 100% safe vaccines, because you and I know even measles vaccines, even polio vaccines, even the more traditional vaccines do not offer 100% protection.
The local government of Quezon City also stated that they are all set to receive up to 3.6 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines expected to arrive in February. The Department of Health has already approved 24 vaccination sites across the city, and the LGU is looking to add more before the vaccination rollout. Asher Cadapan Jr., UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
For those watching us on YouTube, please click the subscribe button you see on the right side of your screens and ring the bell for notifications. You may also follow us on Facebook.
The Senate Committee on Justice and Human Rights conducted a hearing today to probe the series of unlawful killings in the country. These include the recent killing of lawyers and civilians, such as the murder of mother and son Sonia and Frank Gregorio in Tarlac. At the start of the hearing, Chairperson Senator Richard Gordon and Senator Ronald De La Rosa expressed their frustration over the absence of PNP Chief De Bolsinas in the inquiry. PNP Investigation and Detective Management Director, Police Major General Marnie Marcos, who was sent to represent him, said that the PNP chief was attending to other matters.
The Senate is the forum of the people. When we invite, that should be taken seriously. And hindi ako nagpapa-importante dito, but please have a proper excuse if you feel that this matter that we're going to discuss is important to the PNP.
Pukusan ninyo ito para hindi magdududa yung taong bayan na merong involvement kayo dito dahil ang iniisip ng tao, may involvement na naman pulis dyan dahil hindi nasusolve. Mahiya tayo. Alam mo, baka sabihin ng Senado, ini-snub ninyo yung, hindi nyo binibigyan ng weight itong imbitasyon namin.
Sinas later joined the hearing and apologized to the senators.
Pasensya na, I'm very sorry sir, hindi po kagad ako nata-join sir. Sana maintindihan niyo po kami sir at mabuhay po kayo.
According to Gordon's office, 20 people have been killed since January 1 of this year, most of them by riding in tandem gunmen. That is why some senators expressed disappointment after knowing the delays in the release of bigger, readable, and color-coded motorcycle plates as mandated under the Motorcycle Crime Prevention Law. Gordon did not mince his words when a representative from the Land Transportation Office said that only 1,000 motorcycle plates were produced. The senators lament that this is unacceptable, noting that the law was passed in 2019.
Hanggang ngayon, wala pa. 1,000 plates? Ano ba yan? That's why we have a lot of killings using motorcycles.
We have an existing verification of existing motor vehicle registration po. That is already in place.
Ba't kayo gagawa ng sarili nyo? Hindi nyo na nga makita pa yung mga regular cars. Hanggang ngayon, hindi pa tapos yung plaka eh. Nakalagay dito sa sulat sa akin, kay Senate President Soto, our target full delivery of the 13 million backlog in MC plates is by May 2022. Asa na kayo dyan? Shame on the LTO.
The LTO later clarified that they have already produced 1 million motorcycle plates and not 1,000. However, Gordon said it only shows incompetence. The senator is eyeing to launch an investigation in the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee on the supposed delayed implementation of the law. He adds the committee will send a letter to Transportation Secretary Arthur Tugade and LTO Chief Edgar Galvante to explain why they are not fully enforcing the law.
The government remains optimistic that efforts to ease quarantine controls could eventually rev up the economy. Economic managers earlier conceded to a possible negative 8.5% to negative 9.5% economic decline for the country in 2020 in light of the lingering public health crisis. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said the economy could bounce back this year following measures initiated to fuel economic activities. Roque said the economy has started to recover as evident with the fourth quarter data.
Inaasahan po natin next year, kung patuloy po ang pagbubukas nating ekonomiya, ang estimate po ng ating mga economic planners ay magiging positibo tayo at hindi lang po yan. Baka tayo makabalik dun sa ating consistent 6% per annum growth. No?
China's government is tightening up its already draconian measures and introducing a new testing protocol that Chinese doctors say is more accurate and will help suppress the virus. There is one catch, however, it requires an anal swab. Iya De Vela reports.
Some Chinese cities are using samples taken from the anus to detect potential COVID-19 infections as China steps up screening to make sure no potential carrier of the new coronavirus is missed ahead of next month's the Lunar New Year holidays, when tens of millions of people usually travel home to their families. China has been battling new pockets of the disease that have appeared in the north and northeast with strict lockdowns and mass testing in a bid to stamp out the outbreaks. Zhang Wenhong, leader of Shanghai COVID-19 treatment expert team and director of the Department of Infectious Diseases at Huanshan Hospital, Shanghai, said that they are concerned about the recovered patients who tested positive again, infecting others.
To mitigate such risk, Shanghai adopted a preventive approach. After 2 nucleic acid test result negative, we also conduct anal swab for patients after patients swallow the nucleic acid. there may be traces of coronavirus detected in the abdominal cavity, feces, and intestine.
Li Xiongzheng, Associate Director of Respiratory and Infectious Disease at Beijing's Yuan Hospital, said that applying extra anal swabs can improve the detection rate of infection and reduce misdiagnosis. He added that because anal swab is inconvenient compared to other swab tests, it is only being used for people under quarantine in major centers, including Daxing District in Beijing. The said practice gets the attention of some Chinese and triggered talks in Chinese social media. A student who returned from South Korea who had an anal swab in Beijing wrote that it is an endless shame, while a student based in Australia mentioned in her blog that she was administered with anal swab and encouraging others to cooperate with medical staff. Also, a woman from northern city of Tangshan said that the practice is a bit embarrassing but for their own good. Meanwhile, some Chinese health experts are expressing their doubts towards the practice. Dr. Yang Zhenkayu from Wuhan University said in an interview that there have been cases concerning the COVID-19 testing positive in a patient's excrement, but no evidence has suggested it had been transmitted through one's digestive system. Ia de Vera, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Central banks, representing a fifth of the world's population, is likely to issue digital cash in 3 years, according to a survey. Marvi Delfin gives us the details in this report.
The Bank of International Settlements, or BIS, published a wide-ranging survey consulting more than 60 monetary authorities in late 2020 about their engagement and intentions regarding issuing central bank digital cash, or CBDC. Digital cash acts like real cash, except it is not on paper form. Money in an individual's bank balance is converted to a digital code, which can then be stored on an online database, in digital files, or within a pocket card. The concept of e-money released from central banks started in the 1990s, such as Finland's Avant Stored Value Card, while retail CBDC was seen early in Ecuador from 2014. The latest report now indicates that 86% of global central banks are actively exploring and considering the pros and cons of CBDCs, which is up from 80% last year. While the majority remain unlikely to issue a digital currency in the foreseeable future, a sizable minority are moving ahead. Roughly 60% of central banks are experimenting with digital currencies, while 14% are moving forward with development and pilot programs. Emerging markets are driving CBDCs forward with more pace and purpose than their counterparts in advanced economies, citing financial inclusion and efficiency of payments as top motivating advantages. 7 out of 8 CBDC projects are in emerging markets, and one of these is in the Bahamas, the first country to launch a live general-purpose CBDC, known as the Sand Dollar. Sweden's digital euro called e-krona is in progress, while the US Federal Reserve is looking into digital dollar. Although BIS did not provide a country-by-country breakdown, China accounts for the majority of central banks, being home to over 18% of the world population. China has one of the most advanced CBDC projects and is already 1 year into pilot testing its digital currency electronic payment, or DCEP. Additionally, in August, the People's Bank of China also expanded its trial of a digital renminbi to its 3 largest urban regions, which together contain 400 million people. The superpower is fast becoming one of the most cashless societies, fueled by the rise of dominant platforms like Tencent's WeChat Pay and Alibaba's Alipay. This cash evolution, though, leaves behind tens of millions of people who lack the access to navigate China's internet-based economy, creating a digital divide. BIS General Manager Agustin Carstens notes that CBDCs can serve as the basis for well-functioning payments, but only when accompanied with good law enforcement. Carstens warns that CBDCs without attached identity would elevate money laundering concerns, undermine efforts to boost financial inclusion, and contribute to cross-border instability. With the rise of cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, which is not backed by banks or governments, international policy coordination on CBDCs is set to intensify over the coming years as operational complexities continue to present challenges. Marvy Delfin, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Sophia, the first humanoid robot, will soon be mass-produced by mid-2021, along with her 3 other humanoid siblings. Early Briones will tell us why.
Robotics demand was already on the rise before the pandemic. And according to the International Robotics Federation, worldwide sales of professional service robots jumped to 32% and totaled to $11.2 billion between 2018 and 2019. David Hanson, founder and CEO of Hanson Robotics, a company based in Hong Kong, will not wait and is now ready more than ever to jump aboard the increasing demands for more robots as the pandemic opens more opportunities for the robotics industry. Hanson, together with other scientists and researchers, predict that these demands will highly be influenced by the need for more automation in order to keep people safe, especially in the healthcare sector. Sophia, the first humanoid robot released in 2016 by Hanson Robotics, along with other 3 models, will soon face mass production to meet these demands. According to Sophia herself, humanoid robots like her have a big role in healthcare.
Social robots like me can help take care of the sick or elderly in many kinds of healthcare and medical uses. I can help communicate, give therapy, and provide social stimulation even in difficult situations.
And although some may be wary and scared of having robots in such sensitive and critical roles, social robotics professor John Horn, who has worked extensively with Sophia, is positive about economic influence the robotics industry will have in the future. Early Briones, UNTV News and Rescue, we serve the glory to God.
And those are the reasons behind the news, January 28, 2021. Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I'm Angelo Castro III.
Because we need to know, we will always ask why. I am Harleen Delgado. We serve the people, we give glory to God.